at 19. And number 5, Kentucky upset number 1, Tennessee, 86-60. Back, and NASCAR waves the green flag on the start of the 2019 season this afternoon with the running of the Daytona 500. I'm Anthony Pierno.
This is Jim Rome. Join me in the jungle weekdays from 12 to 3 Eastern right here on CBS Sports Radio. See you then.
The only way you can take CBS Sports Radio 1140 with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson.
Good Sunday morning, Raider Nation. Another Sunday, and we still don't know for sure where the Raiders will be playing in 2019. We'll talk about that, though. We might have a bit better of an idea, so we're going to get into that a little bit. It's been a topic of conversation the entire week. We know 2020, it's right here in Las Vegas, but the vagabond nature of the franchise continues, at least for now. Welcome back to Las Vegas's only all Raiders sports talk show, Silver and Black today. Yes, sir. Hi, I'm your host, Scott Gulbranson, founder and publisher of silverandblacktoday.com. Today, joined by my co-host, NFL draft analyst, and I think you're Mr. Indiana, right? Mr. Indiana. Kelly Kreiner is here. Kelly, how are you, man?
I'm good. Well, if you go by what it says, and every time I write something, I'm from Kentucky, but we can hammer that out.
We didn't fix that yet?
No, it's still not right.
Well, maybe that's just kind of like a little bit of a what do you call it? Hazing?
So you're hazing the new guy.
Yeah, since you've been on now several weeks and will be around a lot, it might be something that we have to continue to do because hey,
nobody cares. It's like it's fine. No one cares.
No, but hey, Indiana, Kentucky, isn't that the same stuff? No, I'm just kidding you. But no, Kelly, thanks for being here. And we're going to get into some interesting points of conversation as we go on. Reminder, we are streaming today's show worldwide on the radio.com app. If you already don't have this app, you're missing out. Radio.com is the place for the best sports radio, music, talk, you name it. Download it and listen to us live anywhere in the world, coming to you from the Dollar Loan Center, don'tbebroke.com studio, as always. Also, if you're watching on video today, which I just pointed at the camera, hopefully I didn't poke your eye out, you can watch us, Kelly and I, here in the studio on YouTube. Go subscribe on YouTube. Also, we're on Facebook, Twitter, via Periscope. Always a ton of listener chat and fun going on there as well. So jump in, join the conversation. Usually it is civil. Sometimes there's disagreements, but they usually tend to be civil disagreements. So join Raider Nation from around the world on our video simulcast and watch what's happening in the studio. Also, check out our website, silverandblacktoday.com. This week, Chris Reed continued his look at Raiders draft targets. Kelly earned some Twitter haters this week due to what he wrote about, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that, Kelly, because I just find it funny when you bring up a different point of view or hypothetical. People go nuts like you want it to happen and you believe it's going to happen, and you're telling them they're wrong.
Yeah, anytime you have, especially with draft stuff, everything changes, everything's fluid. It's like I brought up earlier. It's like this time last year, if you would have said Baker Mayfield was going number one, people would have laughed at you. The Khalil Mack trade this time last year. There's a lot of strange things happen in the NFL. You've got to look at kind of all the possibilities because a lot of things happen no one expected. Yeah, no,
that's true. And the thing is, I think that, oops, we're having an issue with the video here. Okay. But the issue is, I think that for people overall, they, for some reason, they're just get so bent out of shape about stuff. And I don't understand it because look, everybody's got their point of view and everybody's a fan and everybody's got, whether they think it's right or wrong, but varying points of view are not bad. Make your argument. And I say argument in a civil way, and we're going to talk about that, too, later with somebody who's got a new way to do that. But anyway, you can check out silverandblacktoday.com. Much more going on there, all on the All Raiders website, the only one based here in Las Vegas, silverandblacktoday.com. Okay, so let's get some topics on the table here and kind of go over what we have for this show and for the rest of the 2 hours that you're going to spend with us because that's what we're here to do. We're here to talk about Raider football and talk about football, all kinds of things in general. So we'll make sure we do that. Thanks for being with us. And so here we go. We're just a few weeks away, of course, from one of the if you're a football fanatic, one of the things that you like and that you geek out about that most people do not, that is the NFL Combine. Okay, that is what sets up the NFL Draft. Raider Nation is biting at the bit, wondering what new GM Mike Mayock and John Gruden will do. The team has been linked by prognosticators to Kyler Murray. Yes, that's, again, back to Kelly's story and the conversation it generated. So Kyler Murray and the Raiders, what's going to happen there? Is it even possible? I mean, you have Derek Carr. Why would you draft a 5'8" quarterback? What will the Silver and Black do to remake the roster and get at least competitive for the inaugural year in Las Vegas? We will talk about all of that as well and make sure that we exhaust all avenues when we talk about it. But joining us live this morning in the first hour as well for two segments, because we want to talk to him, is NFL analyst and QB expert Benjamin Allbright. He always has strong views and is well-informed and sourced information from the league. He's got great sources, including with the Raiders. We'll talk to him about Kyler Murray, the NFL Draft, what he expects to do. We'll talk about a multitude of subjects in those two segments. I really like Ben. I know a lot of people. He seems to be polarizing in social media, but I think that's because he's pretty much honest and he doesn't necessarily care what you think, which is to me is refreshing because Twitter can be a cesspool, man.
Well, I mean, if you're not polarizing, are you really doing your job? Because if everybody agrees or everybody disagrees with what you're saying, there's really no conversation. There's no discourse going on.
No, and we live in the era of personal brand, and if you're an analyst or an expert or consultant, you have to make a name for yourself. If you don't make a name for yourself, then to your point, does anybody know? It's like the tree in the forest, right? So we're going to have Benjamin on. Looking forward to that. The second hour will kick off with some more analysis of possible Raiders draft targets for 2019, as our own senior NFL analyst, Chris Reed, will be with us to continue his Raiders draft breakdown series. Today, we'll look at Ed Oliver, DK Metcalf, and forks up, baby, Arizona State wide receiver N'Keal Harry. Chris has now done 11 of these pieces, Kelly, on silverandblacktoday.com. Make sure you don't miss them. 11. So he's not done. So I think, if you're looking for draft information, it's a very good, quick read. Excuse the pun because his name is Chris Reed. But Chris is a coach, so he technically knows the game. And he tells you what, is it a good fit for the Raiders, why it's not a good fit for Raiders, and you decide. So I like the format.
And it's great. What he does is great because, like you said, it's in little bite-sized pieces, so you're not trying to bring in too much information. Because the average person just wants to know, hey, are we going to draft this person? The people that want just a little more information than that, they don't need the super deep dive that you see I don't need pages of information about a guy.
Right. Exactly.
Give me the highlights. Give me the notes. What do I need?
That's right. So that'll be fun with Chris. He's always a good time. Then one of my favorite guys in radio joins us in the second hour, the bottom of the hour. Scott Kaplan of the Mighty 1090 down in San Diego, longtime sports talk show host, but also an entrepreneur and media mogul. He's got a really cool new website where you can debate all of today's hot button sports issues. much better than the crapshoot that is Twitter and all the hate and spewing that happens there. So Scott's going to tell us about that. I've been using it and starting debates there, so we'll talk a little bit about that. If you're watching on video, we'll also show the website there, so make sure you check it out. Very cool, and we'll talk some AFC West football with him, and maybe even some Alliance of American Football, because San Diego, no longer an NFL town, but now an AAF town with the Fleet. So we'll talk to him about that, and then we'll close the show with Kelly's Corner. And Kelly, we talked about this beforehand as you prepped for this. We're going to talk about the Combine and some take you have on that and what happened this past week with the Combine.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I had 3 or 4 different things that kept changing and changing. Finally, I think the NFL did something smart for once. So I will actually praise the NFL for something they've actually done.
That's good.
That's definitely something you won't see often.
So we're going to do that and a lot more. Now, in the next segment, after we take a break here in a few minutes, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about Kyler Murray in advance of our conversation with Benjamin Allbright, and we get his point of view on it as well, because it's an interesting point, not only from the Raiders' perspective, Kelly, but also just in general about the player, because he is an amazing athlete. He's 5'8" and 3/4 or whatever they call it. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens and where he goes in the draft. And then the reason he's being linked to the Raiders is because I think partly John Gruden has been a wild card with people. No, like you said in the open, no one expected him to trade Khalil Mack, and people still think he's crazy for doing it. So you can't discount him doing something like this.
John Gruden loves every quarterback but his own. He's been like that. I mean, when he in Tampa Bay, everywhere. He's a quarterback guy. So anytime there's a hot quarterback prospect and there's any question at all, he's going to be linked to that guy.
Yeah, and so that'll be interesting discussion. We'll talk about Kyler Murray coming up in the second segment, which is going to be here in a couple minutes. But we also want your involvement. If you want to call in, what do you think? There's been, I've been called a few names this week because of your story. So thanks, man.
You told me to write it.
That's right. So we people just go nuts. And the Derek Carr thing, I've said it publicly. I like Derek Carr. I'm a Derek Carr fan as far as being the quarterback for the Raiders for now. And then I got, you're married to Carr. You love Carr. You're a Carr lover. Okay.
Yeah, spoiler alert, I'm a Derek Carr guy, too.
Yes, exactly. So, but it's always worth exploring and finding out what's happening there. So when we come back here after the break, we're going to talk a little bit about Kyler Murray and get your comments. Call in. 702-889-5978 is the number. Make sure you call. I don't know. Raider fans have such a big voice on Twitter, but they're afraid to call in. So make sure you call in and join us. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
CBS Sports Radio. This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
Welcome back, Raider Nation. It is the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140, emanating from, I think, one of the best cities in the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. There's some beat writers that cover the Raiders in the Bay Area that think this is a really bad place that people are going to get in trouble. We'll talk about that later. But what we're going to do in this segment is talk a little bit about Kelly's story that he had this week on silverandblacktoday.com, and that was about Kyler Murray and what the Raiders may do, again, may or could, maybe I should say could do if they wanted to draft the quarterback out of Oklahoma. And so that created a stir. People were angry at us for even mentioning that they could do this. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. What's that? Okay, so Kelly, first of all, when we talk about, and if you're on the line, if you're a caller on the line, we'll get to you. Just hang in for a second. Kelly, when we talk about Kyler Murray and the piece you wrote this week, explain, folks, your point was that if the Raiders were to draft him, not saying they're going to or that they should, if they were going to draft him, they may make the move way before draft day. Explain what you said.
Yeah, that was the whole premise, is like, because it's come up that, obviously his name's being thrown out there. And the whole part of the story was that if you might be able to, some of the earlier moves they make in free agency and things like that might be kind of lead us to believe even more that they're going to draft Kyler Murray. Because, like I said, this isn't a guy that you can just throw out there and play. You're going to have to kind of cater your offense, your offensive line. You're going to have to make some, have some specific packages and everything just for him to start out with. Because we don't have a precedent for his size. This isn't something you've seen before. So my whole thing was, if they're going to make this decision, they need to do it now, because the last thing they want to do is just throw him out there after, like, if they decide draft time after free agency and everything's done, they just throw him out there. It could be a disaster. It could be the greatest thing ever. We don't know. But you kind of have to have some steps in place before you make this decision.
Yeah, and there's really no harm in talking about what could happen. And by the way, it's not a bad thing for the Raiders to signal that they might draft him, because it might be a chess move for them to get somebody to move up, trade, and they get more value. So we're going to talk about that and continue. Right now, we're going to go on the phone, and we're going to we're going to bring in our caller, Jermaine. Jermaine, what's happening, man?
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good, buddy. What do you think? Kyler Murray.
I don't like him.
No? Why not?
No. I think he's too small for the NFL. He could possibly get crushed. He's not like Russell Wilson, who's kind of thick. But, I mean, there's no telling. Look, he might be a good quarterback. I just don't think he's a quarterback for Raiders. I agree with you said that he could be trade bait. Mm-hmm. And if Josh Allen's not on the board, that's what I want. I want trade back, and trade back. Because we have a team that needs quite a few pieces. We're not just one or two pieces away or anything like that. Some people want to stay in the top 10 for that elite player. I don't really think that what we need is an elite player. We just need a bunch of good to really good players that could play as a unit.
Yeah, and
what elite player outside of Tom Brady does New England have?
No, you know what? It's a great point, Jermaine, and I know Raider fans hate to give any credit to the Patriots for obvious reasons, and no one here likes them either. But I will tell you, you're absolutely right, and I think this goes back to, and it's a polarizing issue, not only talking about maybe Murray, and I agree with you. I think you can play this off so that it looks like you might draft him and try to leverage it to get somebody to move up to number 4, because if a quarterback, if a Haskins and a Murray go early, let's say, just saying, for the sake of argument, then suddenly those guys, like you're talking about Josh Allen and some of the other defensive linemen in the draft, move down. So to move down a couple spots, now, would I move down to 10 or 15? Probably not, depending on if somebody wowed me. But at least you could move.
I would.
You would? Yeah? Well, I'm going to
tell you why I would.
Okay.
Because this is a very, very deep defensive draft, very deep. And at one of the late plays, I wouldn't be surprised if John Gruden went and got one of those tight ends. Because at this stage and age, to me, tight ends are actually more important than wide receivers. They're the only true mismatches in today's NFL. But I'm always somebody who believes you should draft predominantly defense and fill out offense in free agency, because defensive players in free agency usually command the most money unless you're like a OBJ or Antonio Brown or Le'Veon Bell type player.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, though, too. And Jermaine, man, thank you, brother. I appreciate you calling in, and I appreciate you listening. We love you, and thank you. Kelly, what do you think about what he said overall?
Well, the problem, in every draft, everybody, move down, get more picks, move down, get more picks. The problem is that's a two-way street. You have to have somebody willing to move up.
Yeah.
If the top 3 picks, if there's not a trade at 3 or 2 or anywhere, if Williams, Allen, and Bosa are off the board, I don't see anybody clamoring to get up at 4. You know, it could be for a quarterback. You might get that going, and that's where, Gruden throwing out the whole Murray speculation might be trying to add that up there. But, I mean, I would love a trade down if those 3 guys are gone, because 4 to 10 in this draft, you can basically get the same player.
Well, and Jermaine, again, man, thanks for the great call. This great call, great listener. I appreciate you watching. I know you're watching us on Facebook too, so thank you. And I agree. I've been a guy who said we should look at the draft from the perspective of not a fan, but as if we were a GM. And if you're a GM and you're the Raiders, to Jermaine's point, you need a lot of talent. So if you do have a willing dance partner, then you look at it. If you don't have a willing dance partner and nobody moves up and wants to trade into the top 3 or 4 picks, and things don't fall, because you don't know what's going to happen. Everybody thinks Nick Bosa is going number 1, right? What if he doesn't and he falls?
Then he goes number 2.
Exactly. So, but my point, Kelly, is that you just don't know what's going to happen, right? So if that's the case, then you have to look at it from the perspective of, okay, what's going to happen? What's going to benefit my team the most? And, I think as fans, what ends up happening is people get too enamored with a guy, or they get enamored with the thought of what they need as a team, as a fan of a team, and then they're not realistic, right? I mean, it's a whole different game when you're doing it for a living.
Yeah, when you're picking 4th, you just need talent. I don't care where it comes from.
Yeah.
Center's the only position on this team, I think. Well, center, quarterbacks, whether you not believe in Carr or whatever. Those are the only 2 positions on this team you're not going to improve. We have one of the best centers in football. Quarterbacks are hard to come by, so improving a quarterback's always difficult. Any other position, there's somebody out there better.
Well, and we're gonna talk to Benjamin Allbright here at the bottom of the hour, so make sure you stay with us. But Kelly, one of the things, if you think about if the Kyler Murray situation, if let's say John Gruden wants to draft him, I mean, again, sake of argument, not saying it should happen. What do the Raiders then have to do to change that offense? I mean, he fits in the offense to a certain degree, but what would they have to do to enable that offense to grow around that player?
If that's where they decide to go with Kyler, first off, I just see John Gruden pulling what little hair he has left out of his head, because Gruden's biggest thing is he wants no mistakes, no interceptions, and Kyler is a high variance guy. At Oklahoma, he could just throw the ball downfield and up in the air and everything was fine. You're Oklahoma. Your guys are better than everybody else. You're not going to see that in the NFL. So you're going to have to, in my opinion, it's going to be, drafting a tight end or getting a good tight end is going to be very important. You need that safety blanket out there. You're going to have, his best throws are between on the outside on the numbers. He's not a big guy about going over the middle of the field unless it's like, you're running some ends. So you're going to have to get you're going to have to get a short, kind of shifty slot receiver, the guy that kind of get himself open, because Kyler's good. He's got very good accuracy, but he's not throwing your guys open. You're open. I'm hitting you right in the numbers,
Yeah, no. And it's interesting discussion. I am one who thinks that Derek Carr deserves another year and will get another year. At the same time, to your point, Kelly, you just never know what's going to happen. I was on this show all summer saying, no, Khalil Mack's going to be in by camp. Even if it goes into camp, he'll be there by the second preseason game. I had no inclination, nor did I ever think that they would go the direction they did and actually trade Khalil Mack. Okay, so you just don't know what's going to happen. So as much as we want things to happen or we think they should happen, doesn't mean they're going to. So it'll be interesting, and we're going to ask here after this bottom of the hour break. We're going to ask Benjamin Allbright. You can follow him at Allbright NFL on Twitter. Check him out. He's an NFL analyst and quarterback guy. He's a quarterback. People call him guru. I call him expert, whatever you want to call it. But Benjamin's going to be with us. We're going to go in depth with him, not only on the draft, but also on what the Raiders may do. So stay where you are. We'll interact with you on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You're listening to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
CBS Sports Radio. Help us talk the silver and black. Call us at 702-889-5978. Here's Matt Gutierrez and your host, Scott Gulbranson, on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 AM.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 in Las Vegas. A sunny, snow-capped mountain Las Vegas. Not quite like Colorado where our next guest is, and that is Benjamin Allbright. Benjamin is a NFL analyst, also a guy who really tracks quarterbacks, I think, better than anybody out there, and so we bring Benjamin in now. How you doing, my man?
It goes pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing good for a Sunday. You know, we're in the NFL quote unquote off season, although there's as you talk about all the time, there's really no off season anymore. But we're enjoying it. You know, there's so much going on with what's going to happen with the Raiders and so on. But what we want to talk about first with you, Benjamin, is a little bit around the NFL draft. And first, we talked in our second segment about Kyler Murray. The Kyler Murray talk about Gruden and the Raiders and all this other stuff happening doesn't mean there's any substance there, but clearly there is chatter. First of all, talk to me about what you think of Kyler Murray. I read a lot about what you said about his downside. He can throw the ball, he can run, but there are some issues with him elevating to the NFL. Talk a little bit about him from your perspective and what you think his plus would be and what his negatives would be should he go, especially early in the NFL draft.
Well, obviously he's got athleticism and he's got an arm. Those would be some positives. Negatives, I think everybody knows the size factor. But really it's more about how that size factor relates into being able to play in the pro game. In the college game, you can mask deficiencies like that pretty easily. And Oklahoma did. They use wider splits, along the offensive line, and they drop him further back in his drop, in an effort to give him a clear view of the field. And those things work in the pro game, but they don't really work, they don't work in the pro game. They work in the college game. If you try to do that at the pro game, teams are going to double A gap blitz you, and those wider splits are just going to get you sacked. And if you try to drop a guy further back in a drop, that's just going to run you right into the teeth of an edge rush arc. So, those kinds of things are not things you can use to mask that in the pro game. Now, there are things you can do. With Russ Wilson, we've seen they use half-field reads and boot action sometimes, things like that to kind of try to help him out. But, ultimately you have to be able to overcome that on your own. And do we know if Kyler's that guy or not? We don't. A lot of what he did at Oklahoma was kind of one read and run. That system has obviously proven to be highly effective. We saw Baker come out of it last year. Of course, Baker's almost 4 inches taller than Kyler, but it's really, it's a question of getting the guy out there and seeing what he can do. And, if you're sold on his prospects, you go with it. If not, then you don't. Yeah, no, it makes all the sense. And I think that if we look at him, everybody brings up the size stuff, right? And his stature. But I think the points that you've made, and Kelly, you talked about this in your piece too, it's not so much about that as much as it is playing in the NFL and what you have to do behind the line. And Benjamin, you and Kelly actually had the same point of view, which was, remember the line he played behind at Oklahoma was pretty stellar, and the way it was set up. Yeah, that whole line's probably going to get drafted. I mean, you look at everybody on that line is a NFL prospect. The other thing when everybody keeps bringing up the size that gets me, it's like, everybody wants to see what he weighs in at the combine. What's he weighing at the combine? I don't care what he weighs in at the combine. What's he playing at? Yeah, because he could hit the Golden Corral for 2 weeks down there somewhere in Oklahoma, put on 10 pounds, come in at 205. He's not playing at that. Right. Again. Right. And that's, go ahead. That's a large part of it. Guys slim down and bulk up for the combine all the time. Jameis Winston dropped 15 pounds for the combine. Marcus Mariota added 10 pounds when he was there. What's the playing weight? That's exactly it. Yeah, and Benjamin, talk about one of the things you talked about this week was really about him dropping deep in the pocket in the NFL. Talk about that. Explain that to folks and why it would be a challenge for him. Well, if you drop deeper, the idea is a deeper drop gives you a better angle to look, and look down the field. So if you drop a guy deeper, it's typically a shorter guy. You're trying to get a better, a better angle to read the field. The problem with that is that defensive ends don't have to have as much bend to their arc, the arc and their edge rush. So if you're a defensive end and you're coming off the offensive tackle and a guy's in a 3-step drop, you got to have a serious bend to try to get around that tackle and get back to your quarterback who's got an extra second to step up in the pocket to avoid you. But if you take it a 7 or a 9-step drop, something that gets you all, further back there to be able to see the field, the problem with that is the defensive end really just has to make a straight line and kind of one move on the tackle to get to you to sack you. And that's why we see guys that drift back in the pocket get sacked so often. Out here in Denver, that was Trevor Siemian. We can go further back. It was the weak link on the Mike Martz offense, the greatest show on turf. Those guys in those 7-step drops and going back there, they got sacked a lot because there was nobody back there to chip, and they were going back so far it made it easier on defensive ends, and that's why ultimately that offense was kind of phased out.
Right, and if you're looking at this draft, and I know if you go to Benjamin's Twitter handle, which is at Allbright with 2 L's NFL, he's got his Google Doc up there with his quarterback rankings. If you're an NFL GM, Benjamin, and you're looking at this draft class, because we know the draft class next year and the year after has some interesting folks in it, but with this class, if you're an NFL GM in need of a quarterback, and you're looking at maybe moving up in the draft or going in the first round, who's the guy that you would bet your job on?
Well, I don't think there's anybody in this class I would bet my job on. There's been a few guys over the years that I've said that I would. Russ Wilson was one of them. Carson Wentz was one of them. Pat Mahomes, and then of course Baker last year. If a guy comes along like that, I'll say something. But I don't think there's one of those in this class. I think there's 3 guys in this class I view as potential starters in the league, and that's Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock, and Daniel Jones. And then after that, depending on what you think of Kyler Murray, which I would avoid altogether personally, but I understand some people won't. After that, this draft is mostly littered with guys who are going to be spot starters, career journeyman backup types, Brian Hoyer type careers, whether that's guys like Ryan Finley or Will Greer or, Clayton Thorson, things like that. Those guys are not, with Easton Stick, those guys are not, NFL caliber starters. They're just not, and everybody loves to talk about the guy nobody's talking about and all this kind of stuff. But, the reality is you can go out there and you can look, and there's 10 to 12 guys in every draft class at the quarterback position who are going to get drafted. And of those 10 to 12, 3 or 4 of them are, guys with potential starter ability, and the rest really aren't. They're projects that, you're going to try out, but those projects almost never pan out. So, I think that having the Spring League, the Alliance of American Football now, is a great opportunity for some of those project guys to get more reps, and maybe we could start to develop more talent, more down draft talent that maybe would get overlooked.
Yeah, you mentioned Daniel Jones. I know I'm tired of hearing about the David Cutcliffe factor because people should not get credit for working with Peyton Manning because Peyton Manning is Peyton Manning. What do you see in Daniel Jones that makes that you can put kind of stock into? Because when I watch his game tape, I just don't see an NFL starter.
Well, I don't see a day one starter, but I see a guy who can grow there. He understands pro concepts. He's got enough of an arm. He's got enough athleticism. But he's a quick read. He has the things you really can't coach once you get to a certain level. He's got quick eyes, those kinds of things. And if you could coach up the other areas, get him a little stronger, get him to get the ball out a little quicker, and put him in better situations, I think that he could be. A lot of the things that you look at on tape, you got to take with a grain of salt with Duke because, again, they're playing with they're coached up very well, but they're playing with, lesser talent than the teams they usually go up against. So you got to kind of factor that in. If he doesn't have the athletes, is that on the quarterback or is that on the line or the receiver, those kinds of things. And, so it's one of those situations where I see a guy who, is probably Andy Dalton at his ceiling in the pros. And that's a mid-tier starter. Ryan Tannehill, that's kind of his home in terms of where his ceiling is. And I think, again, like I said, that's the guys who's potential starter. The rest of these guys, Locke and Haskins, they've got potential starter ability. But the rest of these guys, I just don't see potential long-term starter.
Again, we're talking to Benjamin Allbright, NFL analyst. You can check him out at Allbright with 2 L's NFL, Allbright NFL. And if you look at this draft too, and how things, mock drafts are what they are. There's just people spending time talking about stuff because we want to talk about football. But if you look at the top end of that draft, and we're going to get in the next segment, Benjamin, we appreciate you staying with us for two, to talk more specifically about the Raiders. But if you look at the top 5 in the draft, do you expect anybody trading in there and making a surprise pick, or do you think things are going to fall pretty much how we've seen and how most of us believe it may?
Well, I don't think there's going to be any surprises as far as that goes. Mock drafts are generally, where we all guess that they're going to go, and the media moves guys up or down based on information they get. So really, mock drafts as they evolve aren't, new information. It's media catching up to what the league believes on some of these guys.
No doubt. Okay, Benjamin, we're going to hold you over for the break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Benjamin a little more about the Raiders, specifically all of their needs, which are numerous, and what they might do in the draft here on Silver and Black today. We'll be back right after this break. Stay where you are.
The Law Office of Michael A. Troiano.
CBS Sports Radio.
Hey, this is Rodney Hudson. You're listening to Silver and Black today.
Indeed you are. Welcome back. We are talking on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line with NFL analyst Benjamin Allbright. And Benjamin, we'll switch gears now and talk specifically about the main subject of our show on usual weeks, and that is the Raiders, the soon-to-be Las Vegas Raiders. I guess we can't call them Oakland yet because they haven't finalized the lease. But if you look at the Raiders, and specifically that first round, 3 picks, 1, 24, and 27, or excuse me, 4, 24, and 27. How do you think that lays out for them? I've been an advocate, and maybe I'm wrong, because anything can happen as players fall or climb in the draft. I've been an advocate for going mostly defense in that first round. What do you think they're going to do based on who you talk to and the information that you have garnered on your own?
Well, I do know that John Gruden likes Kyler Murray. I don't think that's likely at this point, but I do know he likes him. I think they'll probably go defense. John's philosophy and the way that things have worked for him in the past have always been kind of, draft and build a defense and buy an offense. So they would continue to plug and play and use free agents on the offensive side of the ball and build a defense with those draft picks. I think it's probably the intelligent thing to do based on where the Raiders roster is right now. The Raiders need help all over the defensive side of the ball. That's no secret. So I think that, if I'm the Raiders, I'm looking at what's the best player available at 4. Is it one of the pass rushers that's left? Is there a top-tier pass rusher there? Maybe one of the corners. But that's probably the direction that I would go. If I were the Raiders, I would look at 4 as potentially actually a trade back spot. If I'm inclined to get an offer from maybe the Jags or the Giants, where I don't have to move back too far, I can still get a top-tier player. And I can continue to multiply picks for the future because one draft is not going to solve this team. They're in a rebuild. We all know that. And so there's no use of, in pretending. So, I think that if I'm the Raiders, I'm trying to leverage those picks as much as I can to make sure that I'm getting quality guys, but also setting myself up to get quality guys next year as well. Because, again, this is going to be a 2-year project trying to lay the foundation again.
You mentioned a trade back at 4. Do you feel like there's a certain spot where you don't want to go past, say, like a 10, a 12, or a 15, to where you're still getting someone you consider a top-level talent, but you're still going to be able to maximize what you're getting in return?
Well, I would say 10. Not that they're going to trade with the Broncos. I don't think that's happening necessarily, but I don't think you want to go for, past 10. There's really, 8, 9, 10 kind of elite players in this draft as far as that kind of stuff goes. And, if you see your guy in there, you want to make sure you get him. So I would suggest that you want to stay in the top 10, but you don't want to go too much further back. So you really don't want to work something out with, say, Miami or Washington. Because they're a little too far back, and you wind up missing out on one of the great players in this draft and settling for good.
Yeah, and again, we're talking to Benjamin Allbright, NFL analyst. And Benjamin, when you look at the Raiders, to your point about drafting defense, buying offense, there's some names out there. Of course, Antonio Brown. Is that a guy or someone like him? Some of these other guys that are kind of out there, and they happen to both be Steelers with Le'Veon Bell, or at least they were Steelers. Do you see Gruden going after one of those guys, or you think that they're going to go with somebody that's going to be a little less, I think, of an issue, maybe? Or what do you think they'd do there from a veteran standpoint, and what might be available?
Well, I don't think that's. I don't think their off-field is a problem for John Gruden at all. If you look back to his days in Tampa, where he brought in Keyshawn Johnson, who was, the Antonio Brown of his day in terms of, being kind of a diva, and Keenan McCardell, who was who wasn't exactly quiet either. I don't think he has any problem bringing guys like that in. It's just a question of whether or not they're a fit, and whether or not the money works. I think Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown would both be great fits at Oakland. I just don't know that that's a situation that ultimately works itself out. I think that they've got some guys there that they sort of like, but John's always been a guy who didn't really care for coaching rookies because and younger guys because they struggled to get it right away, and he would get frustrated. So I suspect they will go after veterans, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to be those two.
Interesting point. Now, what's your view since you track quarterbacks intensely? What's your view on Derek Carr? I've always said with Derek Carr, when you look at his games, yes, there's been some concerns there on where he's gone, even through the injuries. He gets into another offense, his fourth playbook in 5 years. Now he's going to go into his second year in this offense with John Gruden. Does he deserve that second year? Will he get it? And what is your overview of the future for Derek Carr overall?
Well, Derek can be good. I think you've hit the nail on the head with part of it. I think that stability is a huge part of it. Alex Smith went through something like 7 or 8 different playbooks in his first 8 years before Harbaugh came in, gave him stability, and we all saw how Alex Smith kind of took off at that point. Derek has better tools than Alex. He's got a stronger arm. When you put him in the right system and setup, for him, he can succeed. We saw what he did under Bill Musgrave, who, I'm not a big fan of, but Bill, worked the offense, catered to his skill set, something he didn't do for Case Keenum. So, I think that if you find the right offense for Derek, it can work. I don't know that he's really the perfect fit for what John wants, which, is somebody who's efficient, not going to turn it over and just make, short to mid accurate throws. Derek's got a big arm, and he's a guy that I think probably needs a system that goes vertical a little bit more. So I don't know if the system is a perfect match for him, but I think he deserves another shot. I think that if you look at the back half of that season last year, he really kind of came on.
Yeah.
So I think another year in the offense is really what you need to determine if he's your guy or not, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, I've always found it interesting because Raider fans, as you know, an interesting bunch, a very loyal fan base. But they definitely have, I think, a split view of the quarterback. Many would like to see the Raiders move on. I don't quite get that because, as you know, a quarterback in the NFL, it's not like they're just growing out of every garden in the city. You can't just go pluck a quarterback and, we're good. It takes a lot of work, a lot of development. You have to have the right guy to win in the NFL. But it should be interesting, and so we appreciate you spending some time with us today, especially so much time. But if people want to keep track of you, obviously Twitter at Allbright with 2 L's NFL. Any other way they can keep track of you, Benjamin?
Oh, that's the main one. They can unfollow me there. My timeline's a dumpster fire.
You know what, though? That's what I got to tell you. I tell you, I love how you interact on Twitter because you're matter of fact. You pretty much stay on course with things, and when people disagree with you, you don't have a problem with it. It's just when people go too far, which we unfortunately see all over the place on Twitter today. It gets pretty crazy, but you're always entertaining, and your insight and your analysis is always spot on. So we thank you for being with us today, Benjamin.
No problem at all.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you again soon.
All
right. That was Benjamin Allbright. He's an NFL analyst, one of my favorite guys to follow on Twitter. I know there's actually a lot. I think there's a lot of Raider fans who don't like him because, what I find in today's society, Kelly, is that a lot of people don't like it if you're brutally honest.
Well, yeah, people want to hear what they want to hear. They want to hear what they like.
They do. All right. Well, we're going to pay some bills here at the top of the hour. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Chris Reed, senior NFL analyst with silverandblacktoday.com. He's going to go through his latest draft breakdowns. You're listening to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
The way you can take CBS Sports Radio 1140 with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbransen.
Welcome back. I am Scott Gulbransen, joined by Kelly Kreiner here on the Silver and Black Today. Las Vegas' only all Raiders sports talk show. That's right. Some cover the Raiders when it's easy, and that is not in the month of February.
Can I do that?
So we're here and want to again thank Benjamin Allbright for joining us for 2 segments. Benjamin's always great. I love having him. And if you don't like him, I'm sorry, but that'll give you even more reason to listen, because I find that people listen, Kelly, when they either love or hate something. Not in if they're wishy-washy about it. We've had people on the show in the past, and they're like, nah, but either like them or don't like them, and that gets you motivated
You got the hate watch going.
Yes, and you got some hate for your Kyler Murray piece this week, which I thought was very funny. But now what we're going to do is we are going to go out on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line. And Chris, I don't know, are you a newsmaker? Yeah, you are a newsmaker, right?
I hope not.
Not in a bad way, right? We are joined now by the senior NFL analyst at silverandblacktoday.com, our website, and that, of course, is Chris Reed. Chris has been doing just a phenomenal series of articles on the draft, on possible Raiders draft. That's the other thing I want to make sure people understand is possible Raiders draft picks, because we don't know exactly where they're going. So Chris has taken it upon himself to use his knowledge and background in football to really give us, really, I think, to me, I know I'm biased, but to look at the best series I've seen out there on the web, because it's very concise. It's not too in-depth where the casual fan, even though Chris is an expert at this stuff, it's not like you're going to lose track of it, and he does it in nice bite-sized morsels, gives you everything you need to know about the player. So if you sat down next to a friend or at a bar or wherever you go and wanted to talk about draft targets for the Raiders, you could do that having read Chris's stuff. So, Chris, let's jump right in now to some of the players that you've done in the last week. We're going to start with one of my favorite guys, and I know you're down in Phoenix. I have a daughter at ASU, so I've been following ASU football for 4 years. N'Keal Harry, the big wide receiver. Talk about his game, what makes him so appealing as an NFL receiver.
Well, he's that big body, 6'4", 215-pound guy. He doesn't have the greatest burst to him. He's not going to stack DBs. But when he gets down the field, he's going to win almost every 50-50 ball. And then in the short game, he's so strong and tough to get on the field, on the ground, that his yards after the catch really show up too.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He's not going to be that blinding speed guy, but his size alone, to me, is huge. Kelly, what do you think of N'Keal Harry? I know you have a strong opinion on him.
It's I really like him, and like I said, the 50-50 ball is a big thing. They're showing I saw a clip of him the other day, 42-inch, like doing his vertical, so his explosion might be a little better than we think. He's not outrunning anybody, but that's the big thing. In the NFL nowadays, he's not that X receiver where you're just throwing deep on him, but if you clean up his routes a little bit, if you get him in the open field, he is hard to bring down.
No doubt about it. So when you look at him, Chris, what for the Raiders, and you look at their needs, they have needs all over the place, right? But as a tandem with Derek Carr and what they have going in John Gruden's offense, is he really a great fit, or is he a possible fit? Is he the kind of guy who fits in any offense as long as you have the complements to him, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're not expecting him to go out there and, run 9 routes all day and beat DBs deep, I think he would give Derek Carr probably the most consistent receiver he's had, maybe outside of Jared Cook. As far as a guy that it's 3rd and 7, just tell him to run 8 yards and throw it up. And you're pretty much guaranteed he's going to come down with it.
Yeah, and in today's game, and we heard Benjamin talk about it in the last 2 segments, he talked about tight ends, right, being a big deal, and you talked about it as well, Kelly. And the fact that in today's game with tight ends the size, it creates that mismatch as well. Is he the kind of guy where you could maybe put him out in a situation like that at, I don't know, I know in the Gruden offense they don't use an H back, but something like that where you can split him out wide as a tight end?
As far as Harry, I mean, I don't know why you would need to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there goes my opinion, Kelly. Thanks, Chris. No, I'm just kidding, brother.
You could throw him in the slot. You could. I mean, he could be a good slot guy because you're gonna get some mismatch stuff there. But yeah, as far as like a tight end, he's got size, but he doesn't have that much.
Not that much size. Not
so.
thick.
I mean, he's not that power forward kind of post up type of guy. Even though he is a bigger wide receiver, he's not like kind of like you look at that broad in the shoulder, kind of carrying that weight to be that kind of tight end / slot guy. I don't think he's quite that big.
Okay, so then let's switch now to another guy that I know Kelly is high on as well, and I like him a bunch, and that is DK Metcalf out of Ole Miss. What is it about DK Metcalf? If you're the Raiders or if you're an NFL team and looking to draft a wideout pretty early, what is it about him that makes him so special?
The size-speed combination. He's 6'4", almost 230 pounds. He kind of reminds you of a really raw, like Terrell Owens kind of guy with that size and speed. The only downfall is I didn't see him winning a lot of 50-50 balls, so he kind of has to clean that up. And he had that neck injury, that teams are going to be looking at the combine.
Kelly.
Yeah, the neck injury is the biggest thing because I mean that's I in my opinion he's my wide receiver 1 in this draft if he comes back with a clean bill of health. And then we all saw that. Well, if you haven't seen that photo of him that was circulating on the internet the other day, where he looks like the damn Incredible Hulk, that kind of worried me for a second because I remember David Boston just getting too big and juiced up to actually play football.
Oh yeah.
But then again, somebody pointed out and they the angle of it to where it's like, well, he got a good angle because it's kind of from like a 45, and it reminded me of that whole, you never went on a girl's profile if she's doing the overhead picture thing. It's like that. His size, as long as he stays somewhat flexible and can still run those routes, won't be as big of an issue.
Chris, what about that as we tie up DK Metcalf? What about his route running? I know there's some work to be done there.
Yeah, they didn't have him running a lot of routes. His route tree is kind of small, so especially if he was going to be with the Raiders and John Gruden that are going to have him running a real extensive route tree. But that's most college wide receivers anymore. They got to work on their route running when they get to the NFL. Yeah,
you get them in that NFL coaching pool, and they learn a lot more. Okay, so DK Metcalf, I don't think unless I just don't think either one of those guys is going to be there for the Raiders in the first round because I don't think they're taking him 4, and I think these guys both don't get out of the first round. You agree with that, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, the only offensive guy that they would look at it for might be an offensive tackle. That would be the only guy on the offensive side that would be worth it there, and then they're probably going to be gone by the time 24 rolls around.
Well, okay, so then we're going to switch now to the defensive side of the ball. A guy I really liked going into the college season. He had some issues with injury and some other things, fighting with the coach on the sideline. I don't think that matters much, but I'm just mentioning it. Ed Oliver of Houston, and this is a guy I thought would be a perfect fit for the Raiders. Where do you see him and his game as it fits in the NFL?
He's the modern NFL inside defensive tackle. The guy's like a blast of lightning off the ball. He's going to shoot gaps. He's really good with his hands, working half man on an offensive lineman. He's probably around 280 pounds, which would sound, light maybe 5 years ago, but that's kind of the way the NFL is going. Yeah, no doubt about it. Kelly, what do you think of Ed Oliver?
I agree with what he just said. Everybody is saying, well, he's a little too small. He's this, he's that. The NFL's changing to where now it's all about speed. You're not looking for the defensive tackles to clog up the middle to stop the run as much because it's all about pass rush. The thing I find interesting about Ed Oliver was Zerline mentioned maybe moving him to a linebacker position, which I think is taking away some of what he does well. But if you draft an Ed Oliver and it turns out he is too small to be a defensive tackle, I think your fallback to have him be an off-ball linebacker could be, That's your fallback, and I think he could flourish in that route, but that's not the first option I'm taking. If I'm taking Ed Oliver, it's to just get to the quarterback.
Chris, what do you think of him if for some reason, and of course, all hypothetical, you would think that he would work out even though his size. What do you think of him moving to linebacker as a fallback plan for some of these teams?
You know, if it's with the Raiders, I would say they'd probably move him to 5-tech in the base defense. You know, have him play the end. He had no problem getting in the backfield from the 5 technique in college, and then kick him inside to their dual 3 techniques and the A gap looks on passing situations. I think he would fit just fine with the Raiders. I've got no problem with him on the defensive line.
Now you've been going through this whole series, and I know you're not done. Phenomenal. It's blowing up the website, by the way. The numbers are awesome. But, hey, when you look at so far, when you've looked at these guys, you've looked at Josh Allen, you've looked at the Clemson guys, you looked at everybody. So far, out of all the guys you've seen, if you're Mike Mayock and John Gruden, who are you going to pick at number 4?
If I can pick anybody, I'm still with Quinnen Williams. I think he would just make, the defensive line so much better. Oliver would be great, but they have Hurst and they have Hall that both kind of fit the role that you would think Oliver would be in. So I think Williams would be the fit and the guy that would make everybody better.
All right. Chris Reed, our senior NFL analyst at silverandblacktoday.com. Follow him at @ChrisReed_NFL. Chris, man, thanks, man, and have a great week.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I'll try to stay out of the news.
Yeah, please do. All right, guys, we're going to step aside here for a break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation around some of this and some of the players out there that the Raiders will be considering, some free agent talk, and even throw in some Alliance of American Football when we come back here on Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
Wish side to help wishes come true.
CBS Sports Radio. The only way to take Silver and Black Today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
Anytime, anywhere. I wish I could have that guy's voice. I dig that, man.
It wouldn't work with you, though. It would just
yeah.
The look and the voice. You gotta. Yeah, no.
The movie guy, in a time. Yeah, I can't do it. But
that guy.
In a world.
He used to get picked up in a limo from his house just to go to the studio to record that, and then they just drive him right back.
Yeah, did you see that they had that it was a funny video for I think it was for the Emmys or something like that, where they had all those voice guys get the limo picked up all of them, and then they were all in the limo. Oh my God, it was hysterical. You should check that out on YouTube. Funny stuff. But yeah, voices and just pulling a brain fart about N'Keal Harry at a tight end. I don't know where I was going with that. That was phenomenal.
Hey, man, sometimes you just got to throw stuff out there and see what sticks to the wall.
Well,
that
you know what?
Didn't.
Self-deprecating. Yeah, it was terrible. Anyway, we are back now, and we are here to talk about some news, Raider news I wanted to get on that we didn't hit on the top of the show. Of course, this past week, the Raiders, 3 assistant coaches left the Raiders. Jamal Singleton, the running backs coach, he left as well. Used to be in Indianapolis. He went to the Cincinnati Bengals. Also, the guy I think hurts them the most in losing, because coaches leave every year. It's just, everybody's looking for a leg up and an opportunity and a job to get somewhere to move up. But the guy that I think hurts the Raiders, did an amazing job last year, and that is Derek Ansley, the defensive backs coach, who went back to college, University of Tennessee, which I respect. A guy goes to the pros, he realized, he did a great job, but his heart's in the college game.
Well, he's probably getting paid more to go to University of Tennessee, because if there's a program that's struggled and is at the point to where they're really going to start throwing money at stuff, it's the University of Tennessee.
Yeah, and not only that, but I think for him, I think he's a damn good coach, and I think he's got an opportunity to be a head coach eventually and to follow a path back into the SEC where you can make a name for yourself and move up the ranks, and then you can always be a pro coach later.
Yeah, I was going to say his avenue to be a head coach will be easier in college, obviously, than the pros. There's a lot more opportunities out there. And to go to a high-profile SEC school, it doesn't take much for you to improve. That secondary at Tennessee, everybody's going to be watching. So then it's defensive coordinator, then it's head coach.
Yeah, what is it with this SEC stuff? What I don't understand. Are they good or something?
Well, you just see more pro athletes in the SEC than you do in the Alliance of American Football.
I kid. That's true. Also, Brian Callahan, also to the Cincinnati Bengals. He was on John Gruden's staff and last year, and he left as well. So the Raiders had some spots, and they filled some of the assistant, I call them assistant spots this past week. We'll talk about that. Also, on the lease negotiations, Kelly, I texted yesterday with Scott McKibben from the Oakland Coliseum board up there, and who we had last week on the show, and he had talked to the Review Journal and Michael Gelkin again, and said that they were making progress. He repeated the same thing to me. He said, "Look, we're in conversation. Things are going well. I'm hopeful," was what the quote to me from him. So that's the latest on all of the Raiders in Oakland stuff. And I see Corey, our listener, Mark already said publicly he will not pay money to Oakland for them to turn around and use that money to sue him. Yes, Corey, but you know what? When the NFL is probably saying, you guys need a place to play and you have nowhere else to go, some of that stuff can go out the window.
The longer this goes on, you have to go back to Oakland at a certain point, because you just run out of time to set up anything else and any other, you've got to have lead time to have your people there. You've got to have time to get everything set up, and the longer this goes on, just falling back into Oakland is the only option you're going to have.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I mean, Corey, I hear what you're saying, what Mark Davis said, but that was probably at a time when he was thinking about other options, and now those options have been exhausted. So I think the NFL needs to do their schedule, and so the pressure is not just only on him to find a place to play, but also that. And I think he really, everything he said recently has been around playing that last year as a way to thank the fans and make sure that he takes care of the fans. So we'll do that. We have a caller, one of our regular callers here from, I believe you're in Henderson. Wally, thanks, and thanks for calling Silver and Black today. What you got for me today?
Hey, Scott, I was just wondering, with all the money that the NFL gave that idiot Kaepernick to go away, why don't they help the Raiders get the city of Oakland off their back? All they got to do is help pay for those renovations for, like, Mount Davis, right? Isn't that the major thorn in the issue?
Well, actually,
playing the last season in Oakland.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Wally. The only issue with the lawsuit with Oakland, and it goes beyond just that, the money that they say is due from the Raiders, they've also sued not only the Raiders but the NFL in an antitrust suit. So, and that's a much bigger issue. And we had an antitrust attorney on several weeks ago. He talked about how hard that was going to be to prove. But the antitrust piece of it is a much larger issue, and I don't think that the city of Oakland has enough, based on what the legal expert told us, has enough to really stand on to make it such a significant issue that the NFL feels like it needs to pay it to go away like they did with the Kaepernick situation. I do think, could the NFL help pitch in if they're able to alleviate the lawsuit and as part of this whole lease agreement? Maybe. I have not heard any of that there's anything happening in that direction. I've just heard that the Raiders and the Oakland Coliseum Authority are really working together, and then eventually it has to be approved by the city, which is true. But I just think that they're in a bit of a rock and a hard place, and I think the Raiders will pretty much just pay what they need to for the lease, and then the lawsuit will go ahead separately. Wally, thanks for your call, man. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, bro.
Kelly, I mean, and I hear what Wally's saying about Kaepernick and making that go away, and that certainly is part of what happened. But with this situation, when you're talking antitrust, you're talking about a federal issue saying that the NFL and the Raiders are, in essence, a monopoly keeping cities out of their markets.
Yeah, like you mentioned with the antitrust stuff, this is so much, like, this lawsuit could turn out to be so much bigger for the NFL than the whole cap. People are just going to forget about the Kaepernick stuff. It's just going to go away. Nobody's going to care anymore. But you start breaking into the foundation of what the NFL's built their business model and everything around. That's got a lot longer lasting effects. So that's why that issue won't be something they can just kind of brush off to the side with a little bit of money.
Yeah, we have our listener and viewer, Fred Walker, on Facebook saying they need to hurry up. Indeed. there's no question that they need to figure out where they're playing. The NFL has to do its schedule, and that all needs to happen. So there is that. But I will tell you this. Look, the NFL is if you don't already know it, it is a freaking machine, okay? They can get things done very quickly. They have multitudes of plan Bs, Cs, Ds, Es, and Fs. So I'm sure this is all progressing with the NFL involved behind the scenes, at least through Mark Davis and the Raiders, and that they're going to come to some conclusion. I just don't see any other thing happening. There's no other option. San Diego's ruled out. San Antonio, not going to happen. Tucson, Birmingham, Kuala Lumpur, no, it's not going to happen. So I just think that it's going to go down. And, people are talking about invoices for tickets and all this stuff, Kelly. There's time. It's February.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters is the schedule. So the NFL, the Raiders might, and they might already have some sort of deal in principle, and they've told the NFL, look, we're going to be in Oakland. So you can go ahead and make the schedule, and we'll just figure it out, the rest of it.
Yeah, the schedule can't be that big of an issue, though, because, it doesn't really matter where you're playing if you're Oakland. You're going to be somewhere in the area. You're still playing, 8, 10 counting the preseason, but you're still playing 8 games at Oakland, wherever that is. You can, put to be determined on the schedule and still fill out a schedule.
Yeah, no question. And then you have London, of course. And so, yeah, I just think it makes all the sense in the world, and that's where I'm gonna come down on. I think, and yeah, Corey, I do think $7.5 million for next year is what we've heard, and that might sound like a lot, but again, you're talking NFL teams. You're talking about the Raiders on the cusp of moving here to Las Vegas and the money and the revenue they're going to generate. Believe me, that $7.5 million, it'll go down like some bad medicine to have to pay a municipality that's suing you to do that. But at the same time, to make the problem go away, i.e. Kaepernick in the NFL, you just got to take out the checkbook, write the check, swallow your pride, do what's best for your team in the interim and for the fans in Oakland, and just get going.
It's 750,000 a game. If
Yeah.
you think about it that way, like at this point, isn't it just kind of worth that just to get it over with?
Yeah.
Like I understand you. It basically at this point you're just it's Davis and the NFL not wanting to say we lost or anything like this to the city of Oakland and everything, but dude, the money shouldn't matter. You're going to make the money up tenfold in the long run. Just hell, the goodwill alone by staying in Oakland, you're going to get 750,000 a game.
Yeah, no, I mean, and they got 750 million to come to Las Vegas. So the 750 numbers are wild for the Raiders and the future of the team. Okay, well, we're going to step aside here, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Scott Kaplan from the Mighty 1090 in San Diego, longtime talk show host, former kicker at the University of Pittsburgh, and the founder, CEO of Sided.co, which we're going to talk about, an app. It's pretty cool, and we'll talk to him about how that is playing in the sports world. You're listening to Silver and Black today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Don't go anywhere.
CBS Sports Radio.
Hey, this is Tim Brown, Hall of Famer. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
Tim Brown. Yes, sir.
Where'd he go to school?
Notre Dame, baby. Go Irish.
Yeah. Okay.
Although our next guest probably won't like that, too, because he kicked against him, I think. But we're going to now go out on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line and bring in one of my favorite guys in radio, and that is Mr. Scott Kaplan. Scott is the host and executive producer of the longest-running sports radio show in Southern California, the Scott and BR Show, of course, with Billy Ray Smith, former NFL linebacker, on the Mighty 1090 in San Diego and in Los Angeles. Also, this is the part I really love about him because I have the same mentality because you're not going to get wealthy, and especially you got 4 kids, Scott, so I got 5, so I understand. You're not going to get wealthy on radio, so you need to be an entrepreneur, and that's what you are, working as an executive producer, content provider, fundraiser, you name it. Also, a commentator on the sideline, I believe, still for Westwood One Radio, CBS TV you've done. He's been there doing it all. Scotty, how you doing today, buddy?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me, man. That introduction makes me sound like I'm pretty good, but I'm just folding laundry.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm domesticated. 23 years of marriage. I get you, man. I know exactly where you're coming from. But we wanted to have you on to talk about a couple things. But the first thing we want to talk about, because clearly I was a listener when I was in San Diego, and then when I was in Kansas City on business, I used to listen to you guys too. And then back in radio here in Las Vegas. And you had started to really promote something that you're a part of, which was this website, which is cited.co, and it's a gamified one-on-one debate platform. So you can go on there and get rewarded for your opinions and time. You've pushed this out to media influencers and folks. So media influencer types can kind of monetize their content, and we're showing video of it up here on our video feed so you guys can see it if you're watching us. But it's a one-on-one civilized and timed debate with a winner where the people can choose this. And I love this, Scott, because you know what the cesspool that is Twitter has become. Talk a little bit about the idea, where you came up with this, and how it's going so far.
Well, thank you very much. I kind of got lucky. I had a guy in Pittsburgh who was you ever see those stories about James Conner, the running back from the Steelers?
Yeah.
So he had cancer when he was at Pitt. I played football at Pitt also, and dude, I was the only Jewish football player. Trust me when I tell you, I was a man on an island by myself. And I met a gentleman who, by the way, became James Conner's cancer doctor.
Oh wow!
And so anyway, so he was a big Pitt alumni, and I had met him years ago, and he became a mentor and a friend, a close friend. And he said to me about 2 years ago, there's this young man here in Pittsburgh, and he wants me to invest in this company. I don't know anything about it. Would you look at it? So I did, and I thought, wow, this is kind of a really cool thing for people in radio, because we could really work on pushing our content to people and using Twitter. And people who use Twitter all day long, this drives me nuts. People hide behind fake accounts. They attack people. They start accounts just to attack people. There's just so many weird things that happen on Twitter, and it makes it unpleasant for a lot of people. So I was thinking, how could we incentivize people to be a bit more civilized, number one? And number two, how could we get these people paid for their time and their contributions? Because, dude, I don't know about you, but everybody in life is hustling nowadays. I mean, that's why your friend is driving home from work, and he's picking people up in his car, and he's Ubering, because in the half an hour it could take him to get home, he could make $50, you know? And so that was really the concept. The concept is, how can you get somebody who contributes to Twitter all day long to actually earn some reward points, like airline points or Amex points? And then at the end of the day, when they've banked a whole bunch of points because they've spent a bunch of time and they've invited their friends and they've debated, or they've been part of a conversation, they voted, etc., people get something for their time. You don't get anything from Facebook. You don't get anything from Twitter. And nobody from Instagram is ever going to give you anything. But on this platform, we're building it so that people can actually get stuff for their time.
Well, which is really cool. And again, the whole civilized piece of it. And I jumped in and asked some Raider-specific questions. I've answered some Padre. I'm still a Padre fan. Still answered some questions. I even answered one of the guys you had up there had a question about the gig economy, which you just talked about, and went up there. So I like the platform because it's not just sports only. which would be fantastic too. But I like it because you have it expanded and you have it all around. And to me, one of the keys here, Scott, because you are a member of the media as well, the fact that you have these media influence, including one of our fellow Las Vegans and legends out here, JT the Brick, he's on there as well. So you're interacting with hosts. It helps us too when we go on the air because we can ask these questions, get really good answers from folks, and then talk about it on the air too. So that it really is a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, and I think for what we do, to try and talk to the masses is really important. And so if you find out that if you're talking about the Raiders and those kinds of questions bring a lot of engagement, but if you talk about the Golden Knights and that doesn't bring as much engagement, you say, well, maybe I should just be talking more Raiders because that's what people engage in more often. And, yeah, I mean, it's true. Listen, we all, and I say we all, whether you're on the radio or you're a radio listener, you have helped in all likelihood build these platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You've helped because the people on the air have said these words over and over again, and the people who are driving around use these apps all the time. And so when I ask people how much time they spend a week on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, the numbers can be astronomical. And I always say to people, well, how much money do you make for all that time? And people always say the same thing, whether you're Jim Rome or you're just a guy driving around on a Sunday morning, and you've got 1.5 million Twitter followers or you've got 150 Twitter followers, the answer is the same for everybody. How much money do you make from all that time? And the answer is zero.
Zero. No, you waste a lot of time. And, yeah, the keyboard tough guys, well familiar with those, and so I understand. And I love what you're doing with this, and I know it's somewhat early days, but you're off to a great start. I invite people to go and check it out. It's cited.co. And so, Scott, I mean, I know you'll keep us up to date on that. Follow Scott on Twitter as well, at Scott Kaplan, because you're always putting up videos. You know how to use the platforms and the mediums really well about being omni-channel, so that's good news. Now, what I want to do is transition a little bit in the couple minutes we have left with you to talk a little bit about sports, because you're still heavily involved with the NFL, even though you live, and it hurts me to say this because I grew up in San Diego, a non-NFL city. You're still involved with Westwood One. What's it like for you now? It's been a couple years and having the longest running show in San Diego radio. What's it like being a non-NFL city?
It is very, very bittersweet, I will tell you. Just to give you a quick example, it was this year, last football season, so it was like the end of the year, maybe Christmas Eve or Christmas night. I don't remember exactly what night, but it was the Raiders were hosting the Broncos. And this was the final game of the season, and it felt like it was going to be the final game ever in the Coliseum. And when the game was over and the Raiders had won, the fans were not leaving. They were in the stands. They were dancing on top of the dugouts. The dude in the gorilla outfit, the guys that were all up in the shoulder pads. Yeah. I mean, all these guys were still there dancing and hanging out. There was a feeling of, this is it. And I thought to myself, wow, for me personally, this is kind of fitting because I was there when the Raiders played the Chargers in San Diego, and I was standing there talking to Mark Davis, trying to get something from him before the game. And Dean Spanos, the owner of the Chargers, came up to me, and I swear to you, this is completely unsolicited. He said to me, thank you very much for helping us try to get our initiative passed. He said, and had we gotten the 50%, we would have stayed and fought and tried to take this to the Supreme Court. And I said, hold on a second. You're speaking in the past tense, would have. And I said, have you decided to go to L.A.? And he said, well, now we're leaning towards going to L.A. So this all happens before this game, and I report this to the CBS producers. They tell me it's cool to go on the air with it, and I report this, and that kind of started the storm of the Chargers are leaving. I mean, it was essentially, I guess they probably used me now that I look back on it, and they planted the story, or they just happened to do me a favor, and they gave me the story that day.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, it's really bittersweet to watch the Chargers and the Raiders leave their hometowns for what might ultimately be better deals for their franchises long term. I mean, I look at the Chargers and think these guys have made a colossal mistake. They still have way more people watching Charger football in San Diego than they do in Los Angeles. They are such an afterthought in the Los Angeles sports market. But on the other hand, the Raiders were in a terrible stadium in a strange part of town, and I say strange because it's changing. You know, the Warriors are moving into downtown San Francisco, and the Raiders could not get any help. And, you know, by the way, I'm not sure they deserved any help because, let's face it, Mark Davis didn't have the money. Because what happened for Mark was he actually worked this great deal. Now he's got Bank of America in the state of Nevada and the city of Las Vegas and all the people that come and visit. We will all pay for that stadium, and it will make the Raiders a stronger financial commodity over the next 20 years. That doesn't feel good. It feels good for Mark, and it feels good for the NFL, but it doesn't feel good for somebody who's been covering this, because I feel really, really, really bad for the fans that were standing there that night in Oakland saying, you can take the team, but leave the name and leave the records. We want a new team. I feel bad for the fans.
No, we say that all the time. You know, we're obviously the beneficiary here in Las Vegas because we're getting an NFL team and they're building a beautiful stadium. But we've always said that, you know, for fans, it stinks. I grew up a Charger fan, right? And so for me, when the Chargers, I kind of knew, I always thought back to 2012, 2013 that they were going to be gone. So I started to kind of unhook my wagon from them from a fandom standpoint, but I know how it feels. So I understand, and we're always sensitive to the fact that the Raiders fans up in Oakland are losing their teams and always try to welcome them here. Scotty, listen, man, good luck with Cited.co, and we'll have you on again. I really look forward to talking to you, and thanks for spending the time with us.
I can't thank you guys enough for giving me a little bit of time this morning. You know, today it's Sunday. It's a beautiful sunny day. And, you know, one quick thing is because the NFL's not here, you know what we're going to do today? We're actually going to go tailgating for the AAF and the San Diego Fleet.
Yeah.
Who are playing today at the old Qualcomm Stadium. So we're going to see if we can bring tailgating back to a pro football game, even though it's not the Chargers.
Well, there's great fans in San Diego, despite what Raider fans and Charger fans feel about each other. They are the core old school Charger fans in San Diego are great fans, and I no doubt they will support the Fleet. Have fun out there. We'll definitely watch you to see how you have a good time in the tailgate lot.
Hey, Scott, thank you, buddy. I really, really appreciate the time.
Thanks, man. Scott Kaplan from Mighty 1090 and Cited.co. We're going to be back right here on Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140.
The law.
CBS Sports Radio.
This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
Welcome back to the Silver and Black Today here on CBS Sports Radio 1140, the only Las Vegas talk show devoted to Raiders football and everything that surrounds the future Las Vegas Raiders. Also, I didn't realize it because I'm friends with Scott Kaplan on Facebook as well, and today's his birthday, so I didn't get a chance to wish him birthday. So, Scotty, if you are listening, happy birthday, man. If not, I will text you that. So, again, thanks for having him on. Check out Cited.co. I sent some people there last night to argue some points that I was on. So, Kelly, you'll have to jump on.
Oh, I'll definitely have to.
You like to argue, so it'll be.
I was a bartender for 18 years. That's like I said. This is basically the monetization of the bar bet or the bar argument. You know, it's like there's no right or wrong. You're just throwing out your argument, and I'm all about that.
That's why I love it. It's a good idea.
Everybody needs to hear my 2 cents.
That's right, and it's not in 280 characters with a bunch of, like I call them, keyboard tough guys. We're going to get into Kelly's Corner real quickly. Had some viewers and listeners ask about the stadium, Kelly. Progress on the stadium, it's right on track. We had a ton of rain this week, which is one of the wettest weeks in Las Vegas in a long time. In fact, we had more rain on Valentine's Day, 1.11 inches, and it was the only the 29th time and since 1938 that we had over an inch in one day.
Yeah.
So it was wet, but that has not stopped the stadium. I was with the Laborers Local 872 guys this week, and it's about 38% done. It's about to kick into high gear. They have the cranes inside the stadium now as they start to fill out the structure and get ready to put a roof on. So it's going really fast. Okay, so we are now going to switch gears and go to Kelly's Corner, spelled with a K. Corner. Kelly's Corner.
You spelled it that way, man. I spelled corner with a C. I don't know.
Because I'm corny. So, Kelly, let's talk about it. You want to talk about the NFL Combine?
Yeah. I was all set to come on here today and just hammer the NFL for the way they handled the Jalen Ferguson situation, about giving him the invite and then pulling it back because he was in a fight at a Burger King when he was in high school. You know, my issue with the NFL is just the way they kind of handle these situations to where who gets an invite and who doesn't. You know, Riley Ridley has a marijuana arrest. He gets a combine invite. The big one to me was Dakota Allen, the linebacker out of Texas Tech. He has a felony burglary charge that was hanging over his head. And not only did he get an invite, but a few days ago, the NFL writes this big flowery piece about his chance at redemption, and he's such a good guy and everything now, just completely forgetting that they broke into a house they thought was a drug dealer to steal marijuana and money, to find out that it was the wrong house and they just got a safe full of guns. You know, that they're cool with and they're fine, but a small issue, you know, when you're in high school where you get in a fight with somebody at a fast food restaurant, basically they're saying if Jalen Ferguson would have broken into the Burger King and robbed it, totally cool with that. You can come to the combine. But luckily they came to their senses, you know. The guys, Jeffrey Simmons, the wide receiver out of Colorado State, Williams, I'm totally blanking on. I think it's Preston Williams.
Preston.
And Ferguson are going to get to the combine to do their interviews like they should, because the NFL needs to get off this high horse, that it's not a privilege to play in the NFL. It's a job. The combine is a job fair. It's a job interview. That's all it's ever been. That's all it should be. The reason they came up with the combine was to get all the teams and all the players in one place to make sure it was easier for everybody to get the medicals, get the interviews. You're not sending your guys to 100 different schools. You send them to one place and get it now.
Right, and it wasn't set up to be a televised event like it is now. Now it's a televised event. There's pregame, there's postgame. It's like a regular broadcast of a game, and that is all new. And so, yeah, I have a problem with the NFL picking and choosing what character flaws they have issues with and which they don't have issues with. And this goes with a lot of things. I mean, you talk about that. We're not getting into the Kaepernick thing today. But certainly, they can go heavy on somebody when it comes to domestic violence. Again, domestic violence, deplorable, disgusting. But then somebody else can do something like be involved in a double homicide, and they're welcome back into the Hall of Fame. It's all good.
You're on the cover of Madden.
You're on the cover of Madden. So to me, I just want consistency. Give me consistency in how you treat these guys. Don't treat one guy who got in an assault, an altercation. I mean, a young guy gets into a fight with somebody, and they're charged, right? It just happens. And Michael Troiano, who's a defense attorney, criminal defense attorney, a sponsor of this show, tells us all the time, stuff happens. It's stupid. If it happens multiple times and it keeps happening, different story.
No, yeah.
But to your point, to hurt these guys' careers makes no sense. And I agree with you. I'm glad that they changed and they relented, I think, to pressure, frankly, from the outside. And probably from the teams, the owners themselves.
I was going to say it was probably coming from the teams, because the NFL works for the 32 teams.
Yes.
The commissioner works for
Supposedly.
the 32 owners. That's what this is for.
Yeah.
And if you're, the guys with the red flags, they're the ones you really need to talk to more than anybody else.
Right.
You need to talk to Kyler Murray to see if he really loves football. You need to talk to Jeffrey Simmons about the fight that happened. There are certain people you need to talk to. You're not really worried about going out there and talking to Jonah Williams and see if he loves football. Everybody knows,
they know where he's at.
Yeah, you know where his head's at. It's these guys that have the red flags that you need to discuss, because they're the ones you have to really worry about later in the game.
I agree. And the moral equivalency of certain egregious activities versus other, it just doesn't make any sense. Kelly, man, thanks again for coming in.
Yeah,
Appreciate
no worries,
it.
man.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to step aside. I want to thank our engineer, David Stepanian, for his work today, as always, on the show. Also want to thank our guests, Benjamin Allbright, Scott Kaplan, for joining us. That's going to wrap it up. Make sure you stay connected with us. Visit silverandblacktoday.com. Follow us on Twitter, silverblack2day. Check out the podcast and the archive of this show. And make sure you do that. Also, thanks for watching on video today for those of you that were there. It looks like we had a bunch of folks, and we appreciate that as always, too. Your support is what makes us go. Without you, we don't exist. So thank you very much for all that you guys do. And remember, we sign off, but we never say goodbye, Raider Nation. Thanks for listening. Until next week, may the autumn wind always be at your back. Take care, everybody.